Right, let's take you to live developments. 6 Southern African liberation movements are attending the Liberation Movement Summit. This year's summit looking at ways to tackle the continent's economic crisis. Let's take you live to that event.
Ambassadors and High Commissioners, members of the Diplomatic Corps, delegates from observer organizations including the Pan-African Youth Union, Pan-African Women's Organization, and the Young Women of Africa. Comrades and friends, fellow revolutionaries, it is an honor to stand before you tonight among brothers and sisters from sister liberation movements, comrades with whom we have shared trenches, dreams, pains, and history. Tonight is not just a dinner. It is a reunion of the soul of Africa and her allies, forged in fire and grounded in a vision for justice and human dignity. As we reflect on the present, we must also remember our treacherous journey towards liberation. That journey was marked by sacrifices, resilience, and unwavering determination to secure freedom, equality, and justice for our people. Tonight we gather under the proud banners of our movements that refuse to accept colonialism as a fate. Movements that made the mountains shake and empires tremble. Movements that lit torches of freedom in Angola, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, South Africa, Tanzania, and far beyond. We also recall that the project to dismantle apartheid, racism, colonialism, and hate was one which profited from international solidarity with the OAU Liberation Committee, as well as the progressive diaspora and friends at the forefront. We must also recall that our struggles were not simply for political independence, but for the total liberation of our people, economic, cultural, intellectual, and social. It was Thomas Sankara who reminded us that, and I quote, "He who feeds you controls you," close quote. Comrades, Sankara reminds us that liberation is incomplete if we do not own the means of production. If our economies remain trapped in colonial structures, and if we remain dependent on others to feed our people, employ our youth, or even write our policies, the time has come to ensure that the hard-fought-for democratic dividend become a lived reality for our masses. Thus, we have the urgent task to reassert the soul of our movement in the 21st century. We cannot become custodians of yesterday's glory while today's youth are unemployed, disillusioned, or even migrating. We must become engines of transformation, homes of ideology, and centers of accountability. Tonight we honor those who walked this road before us, and we reflect on the kind of legacy we ought to leave behind. After all, collectively, we are the stewards of these hard-won freedoms. Our people did not fight for elite enrichments, factionalism, or bureaucracies that are indifferent to suffering. We must ask ourselves, are our movements still vehicles of justice, or have they become platforms for status and convenience? It was Che Guevara who said, and I quote, "A true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality." Close quote. Che Guevara's words remind us that revolution without love becomes mechanical. Let us lead with love, love for the landless, for the excluded, for women whose struggles continues on all fronts, for the workers who are told to wait whilst wealth multiplies elsewhere, and the youth who are told to wait for tomorrow. Our unity as liberation movement is not symbolic, it is strategic. The enemies of our people are reorganizing. Imperialism has rebranded, but it is no less exploitative. Multinationals controls our minds, our data, our narratives, and even our elections. That has replaced the chains of slavery. Artificial intelligence and technology, if left unregulated, will create a new digital divide deeper than apartheid ever was. This gathering, therefore, stands at a crossroads. Consequently, it must serve not only as a remembrance, but also as a recommitment. A commitment to address remaining challenges and focus on sustainable development. Let us renew our ideological clarity. Let us reclaim the narrative of transformation. Let us reaffirm our commitment to international solidarity, not as a memory of the past, but as a living force for change in the present and the future. This will require that we double down on our current approach to international relations within the Southern African region. That approach is informed by our historical experience and relationship with the frontline states that were forged during our protracted years of struggle for liberation against racism, colonialism, and apartheid. Taking cue from these lived experiences, the South African G20 presidency has resolved to focus on solidarity, equality, and sustainability. At its core, as affirmed by Minister Ronald Lamola recently, South Africa's G20 presidency recognizes that the challenges we face are not isolated. They are interconnected and escalating. Geopolitical divisions are widening, economic tensions are rising, and the devastating impacts of climate change are accelerating. We have also noted the growing tendencies to unilateralism. These right-wing populist-led tendencies undermine global collective decision and, if left unfettered, stand to undermine global peace and security. We cannot afford to let these fractures deepen. Therefore, solidarity demands that we recommit to multilateralism and dialogue. Equality requires us to confront the stark disparities between the global north and the global south, and sustainability is therefore the cornerstone of our collective future. Comrades, we therefore have the obligation to recalibrate the global balance of forces in favor of progressive forces. With a renewed scramble for Africa by both traditional and emerging powers, the challenge has become more nuanced. These nuances have taken political, economic, and military dimensions. Thus, in navigating these new global realities, we must continue to be guided by the principles that have guided our movement so far. This includes self-determination, anti-imperialism, social and economic justice, and the pursuit of equality and freedom. Comrades, we therefore take this opportunity to reiterate our unwavering support and solidarity with the people of Palestine, Cuba, and Sahrawi, and all marginalized people of the world. We also take this opportunity to also call for dialogue in the conflict ravaging areas in the Horn of Africa and elsewhere. It is the grass that suffers when the elephants are at war. We are told that the war in the Sudan has severely affected millions of women and children, with over half of the 24.6 million people requiring humanitarian assistance being women and children. This is far more than those who have been affected in Gaza and Ukraine. Yet the world has turned a blind eye on Africa. Comrades, the oppressors and real fathers of the wars and conflicts have no motivation for peace. Remember the words of Kwame Nkrumah, who stated the following: "It is far easier for the proverbial camel to pass through the needle's eye, hump and all, than for an erstwhile colonial administration to give sound and honest counsel of a political nature to its liberated territories." Close quote. We must therefore continue to strengthen our bonds of solidarity and camaraderie. This must be steeped in ideological precision and renewal. That renewal requires the strengthening of institutions of democratic governance. Thus, tonight, let us rededicate ourselves not to nostalgia, but to renewal, not to memorials alone, but to undertake movement building. We must modernize, professionalize, and democratize our parties and ensure that our values do not decay with time. We must be vigilant, we must be united, and we must be ideologically clear. Comrades, we recently bade farewell to the founding father of Namibia, Comrade Sam Nujoma, who reminded us that the struggle for our independence has not been easy. It was a long and bitter one, but we triumphed. Let us not betray it. Close quote. Consequently, we must remember that Pan-Africanism was not a luxury. It was survival. Today, it is necessity. We must build African value chains, harmonize policy frameworks, invest in youth across borders, and protect our continent's sovereignty from both external and internal threats. In that guise, Comrade Nujoma calls for our conscience. We dare not betray the struggle, not with our silence, not with inaction, not with complicity in systems of inequality. Our struggle must now be against poverty that feels permanent, inequality that has been normalized, unemployment that persists, corruption that kills trust, violence that terrorizes women and children, and climate injustice that threatens our lands. We must also regenerate the cadreship of our movements. The youth must not only be mobilized, they must be empowered, educated, trusted, and listened to. Let us create a space for the next Sankaras, the next Bikos, Mbuya, Mehanda, the next Queen Nzingas, not to quote, but to lead. Compatriots, let us reaffirm that what brought us here, the dignity of the African, that no child should be born into inferiority, that no land should be controlled by the greedy, that no voice should be silenced by repression and hunger. Our comrades deployed in government must accelerate efforts to resolve these critical issues. We must be committed to addressing the root causes of conflict, including poverty, inequality, underdevelopment, and promotion of inclusive political dialogue. Collectively, we must recommit to the creation of an Africa that we want, with strong and ethical leadership, with good governance, democracy, and respect for human rights. An Africa that upholds the rule of law and serves justice. The Africa we long for is the one that has shared values and a strong cultural identity. We aspire for an Africa that is united and influential as a global player and partner. This will require that we put away our fancy apparel and get dirty to find lasting solutions. As Pan-Africanists, we call for African solutions for Africa's challenges. Ultimately, whatever contribution we can make requires partnership and collaboration from all fronts, as we can only support our regions and Africa's transformation by working together. It is imperative that we build a better Africa and a better world that is free from the shackles of underdevelopment and the legacy of colonialism, by establishing and sustaining friendships, working towards peace and stability in the continent and the world, and improving economic relations. Unfortunately, the face of poverty in Africa remains a black woman with a child on her back. This situation has led to many of our black and female citizens being inactive participants in the economy. According to AU report, in Africa, the informal cross-border sector is estimated to represent 43% of official gross domestic product, GDP. This presents a unique opportunity to formalize this sector as we move towards integrating our economies. This sector is cardinal in realizing the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area and Agenda 2063. We must also talk about complex issues that continue to divide our nations, because failure to do so means we are regressing and moving further away from building and uniting our countries. Social cohesion and economic development necessitate our support for the stabilization of our nations. Our people need to have their hope and aspirations restored through visible action and tangible improvements in their material conditions. These are the conditions required to foster social cohesion and economic empowerment, which will result in the prosperity of our countries. This year, the 70th anniversary of South Africa's adoption of the Freedom Charter will be celebrated. The ANC and its allies adopted the Freedom Charter, characterized by its opening demand, "The people shall govern." We should ask ourselves at this moment whether or not we have made any headway in the process of putting the Freedom Charter into effect, securing our country's prosperities. Program Director, tonight, as we gather to celebrate the wisdom of the ages, let us draw inspiration from the outstanding leaders and visionaries who have paved the way for us. Let us recommit ourselves to the noble ideas of the liberation movements and work towards a brighter and a more prosperous future for all Africans. Compatriots, in closing, let us remember the words of the father of our nation, former President Nelson Mandela, who once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." Close quote. Together we can overcome any obstacle and achieve greatness of our continent and our people. Let us march forward with determination, unity, and resilience, knowing that the spirit of liberation will guide us towards a brighter tomorrow. Let the dinner not be the end of a conversation, but the beginning of a new coordination of liberation movements to defend the people once more, from the boardrooms, the parliaments, and the trenches of poverty and injustice. Our duty is to keep the idea of freedom alive, not the freedom to exploit, but the freedom to become, the freedom to live with dignity, in peace, with equal opportunities. Long live the spirit of Africa's liberation. Long live. Long live revolutionary unity. Long live. Aluta.
There you have it, former Deputy President Paul Mashatile speaking there at the 6 Southern African Liberation Movements, attending the Liberation Movement Summit, speaking to some very important points there, mentioning quite a bit the youth, the impact and the role of the youth in the continent, saying the youth must not only be mobilized, but they must be empowered, trusted and listened to, and also speaking about the unity and the liberation of movements being a priority, saying Pan-Africanism is not a luxury, it was survival, and mentioning that today it is a necessity. It protects the continent's sovereignty from both internal and external threats. Also speaking quite a bit about the point of the movement, saying that it's more than just a dinner, it's a reunion of the soul of Africa, and that it cannot be that the continent remains custodians of yesterday's glory. They must become the engines of transformation, mentioning quite a few times the impact and the role of youth in the continent, the role that they should be given as young people when it comes to the economy and moving the continent forward.